Have you ever stayed in a relationship not because it made you feel whole, but simply because it was familiar? That quiet kind of comfort that wraps itself around your wounds like gauze, yet never quite heals them? You laugh at the right times, nod when expected, sleep beside someone who says they love you. But deep down, a piece of you aches with a truth you're too afraid to say out loud. This isn't love. This is survival. Many of us weren't taught how to recognize emotional wounds disguised as connection. We were taught to hold on, to make it work, to sacrifice for the sake of peace, even if that peace came at the expense of our own spirit. But what if the peace you protect is the very thing destroying you? You see, unhealthy relationship patterns don't always arrive with broken furniture or bruised skin. Sometimes they come with soft words and silent compromises. Moments where you abandon yourself in the name of understanding, where you say yes just to avoid the fight, where you shrink your dreams just to stay lovable, where your love becomes a transaction of approval rather than a communion of truth. And here's the hard truth. When these patterns go unnoticed, they don't just damage your relationships, they redefine your identity. You begin to question your worth, your instincts, your boundaries. You forget what it means to feel chosen without conditions. But this video, this conversation, is your interruption. Today, we step off the carousel of confusion. Today, we look these cycles in the eye. And not with anger, not with blame, but with clarity. The kind of clarity that ancient Stoic wisdom has offered for centuries. Because the Stoics didn't waste their time trying to change other people. They trained themselves to see clearly, to love wisely, and to walk away with peace rather than resentment. They taught that the quality of your relationships reflects the quality of your values. So if you've ever wondered why you keep repeating the same emotional story with different faces, if you've ever felt drained in the presence of someone who claims to care, if you're tired of feeling like you're not enough unless you're hurting, then stay with me. Because today, we won't just break relationship patterns, we'll break illusions. We'll explore the hidden emotional mechanisms that keep you tethered, the Stoic tools that help you reclaim your power, and the quiet strength that's been sleeping inside you all along. And if this message resonates, if you find a piece of yourself in these words, I invite you, gently, to like this video, subscribe to Stoic Now, and join a growing community of thinkers, seekers, and quiet warriors choosing growth over guilt. Now take a deep breath. Let's begin the journey inward. Not just to heal, but to remember who you are. Number 1. Recognizing the pattern, the mirror test. It often starts with something so subtle, you almost miss it. A quick dismissal of your feelings. A joke made at your expense, brushed off as just teasing. A decision made without your input, but always with the expectation that you'll simply adjust. At first, you tell yourself, they're just stressed. They didn't mean it. It's not that big of a deal. And yet, it happens again and again, until one day, you're standing in front of the mirror, not just brushing your teeth or fixing your hair, but searching for yourself, wondering when exactly you stopped recognizing the person staring back. That's how patterns work. Not like hurricanes, loud and chaotic, but like rivers, quiet, persistent, carving away at your sense of self, one tiny compromise at a time. The Stoics knew this well. Epictetus once said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Because to recognize a toxic pattern, especially one you've called love, is to be willing to question everything, even your own story. Let's name the pattern for what it is: trauma bonding. That emotional glue that keeps you tied to someone who hurts you just enough to break you, then loves you just enough to keep you hopeful. It's the cycle of hurt, apology, temporary calm, then hurt again. And each time, your nervous system adjusts, normalizing the emotional roller coaster, until chaos feels like chemistry, and peace feels boring. Another name? Emotional unavailability. You open yourself up, vulnerable, raw, honest, and in return, you get a wall, an excuse, a distraction, a partner who is physically present, but emotionally missing. You crave connection, but instead, you become the sole carrier of the relationship's weight. You adapt, you overfunction, you try harder, and still, nothing changes. And then there's the quiet killer, validation addiction, the constant, compulsive need for their approval. You shapeshift to be liked. You censor yourself to avoid conflict. You perform, hoping for love like a child hoping for praise. And every time they finally offer a crumb of attention, your heart leaps. Not because it's enough, but because you've been starved for so long. Sound familiar? The reason these patterns are so dangerous is because they aren't loud. They don't arrive with flashing signs or red flags. They arrive wearing the mask of love. They whisper, "This is what you deserve. This is what love looks like. This is just how things are." But here's where the mirror becomes your weapon. Because when you learn to pause, to examine, not just what's happening to you, but why you're tolerating it, everything begins to shift. You start asking the questions you once avoided. Why do I feel exhausted after being with them? Why do I only feel valuable when I'm fixing something? Why does love always feel like a test I'm about to fail? These aren't weaknesses. These are the first sparks of awakening. As Seneca wrote, "Until we have begun to go without them, we fail to realize how unnecessary many things are." That includes relationships that cost you your peace just to keep someone else comfortable. The truth is, our early attachments shape our adult tolerances. If you grew up feeling unseen, you might confuse being overlooked with love. If you were taught to earn affection, you might cling to someone who withholds it. These patterns aren't your fault, but breaking them? That's your responsibility. So here's your challenge. Stop romanticizing what hurts you. Stop rewriting history every time someone shows you who they are. Stop defending what's been quietly destroying your joy. Because love, true love, doesn't require you to shrink. It doesn't thrive on confusion. It doesn't make you question your worth just to feel wanted. Love, in its healthiest form, should feel like coming home to yourself. But to get there, you must first be willing to stand in front of the mirror, not with blame or shame, but with courage. The courage to say, "I see it now. I see what I've been doing, and I'm ready to choose something different." Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." So if your thoughts have been painted with doubt, fear, and longing, then yes, your soul will begin to dim. But if you start thinking thoughts of truth, of clarity, of self-respect, slowly, steadily, your soul begins to shine again. This is not a one-day revelation. This is daily work. It's journaling when your chest feels tight. It's walking away when the old version of you would have begged to stay. It's choosing discomfort today so you don't have to live in regret tomorrow. Because once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. And once you name it, you can break it. You're not crazy. You're not dramatic. You're not too much. You're just finally awake. And now that your eyes are open, the next step is clear. Let's keep walking. Next, we dive into what the Stoics would say about relationships, especially the ones that test our soul. Because breaking the pattern isn't just about leaving others behind. It's about finding yourself again. Number 2, the Stoic foundation. What would Epictetus do? In the quiet corners of our minds, there's often a question we're too afraid to ask aloud. What if I'm the one keeping myself stuck? Not out of weakness, but out of misplaced loyalty. Out of hope that love will change someone. Out of fear that if we walk away, we'll prove ourselves unlovable. But the Stoics weren't interested in sentimental illusions. They weren't afraid to look reality in the eye and say, "This is what it is." Now, how will I respond? Epictetus, born into slavery, stripped of freedom, understood something many people spend lifetimes avoiding. You cannot control others, only your reaction to them. And that truth, it is liberation in disguise. He wrote, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." Think about that. Freedom, not just political or social, but internal, emotional, relational. The kind of freedom where your self-worth doesn't hinge on how someone else treats you. Where your peace isn't held hostage by another's inconsistency. What would Epictetus say if he saw you chasing the same person who keeps disappearing? He wouldn't shame you. He would observe, calmly, and he would ask, "Is this within your control?" Not as a rhetorical trap, but as a doorway to clarity. If the love you're giving feels like begging, if the peace you crave depends on someone else's apology, then what you have isn't a relationship. It's a negotiation with your own self-worth. The Stoics believe that we are not owed kindness, loyalty, or understanding from anyone. These things are gifts, not guarantees. And if they are not offered freely, then to chase them is to chain yourself to a ghost. But what you are responsible for is your boundaries, your standards, the thoughts you choose to entertain when the silence gets loud. That's the essence of Stoic love, not the kind that clings, but the kind that honors the self without needing permission. Imagine a woman. Let's call her Naomi. She's been dating someone for 2 years. It's always on their terms. The texts come late. The plans get canceled. The promises dissolve like mist. But every time she tries to leave, they say just enough to keep her there. She tells herself she's being patient, that love is hard, that this is what compromise looks like. But Epictetus would offer her a mirror, not a rescue. He would say, "What are you accepting in exchange for your peace?" Because the Stoic doesn't chase apologies. The Stoic returns to clarity. Marcus Aurelius echoed this truth when he wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In other words, don't let the carelessness of another drag you into emotional chaos. Don't become reactive. Don't trade your inner calm just to win a fight they don't even know they're having. Instead, be like the still lake, deep, unmoved by surface storms. Let your silence speak when words become weapons. Let your standards whisper louder than your longing. You might say, but what about love? Doesn't love fight? And yes, love fights, but it doesn't beg. It shows up. It honors its word. It grows, even when it's hard. Anything else? That's performance. That's possession. That's control. Real love, through the Stoic lens, begins with how you treat yourself, with how you speak to yourself in the aftermath, with whether you rush to chase or whether you sit with the ache and say, even this will not break me. There's strength in staying, but there is also strength in leaving. And it takes a Stoic heart to know the difference. So if you're wondering how to break these patterns, start by removing the illusion that you must fix what someone else refuses to change. Start by living so truthfully that anyone who cannot meet you there simply fades. The Stoic doesn't detach from people to be cruel. They detach from falsehoods to be free. Because sometimes, the most radical act of love is choosing not to participate in your own disrespect. And when you do, something strange happens. You stop feeling desperate. You stop waiting for the message, the apology, the proof. You become whole, not because someone came back, but because you came back to yourself. This is what Epictetus would do. This is what you can do. And now that we've laid the foundation of clarity, let's go deeper. Next, we'll explore why these patterns pull at us so powerfully, how our very biology gets hijacked by unhealthy love, and how the Stoics offer us not just emotional wisdom, but neurological freedom. Number 3. The emotional bait. How we get hooked. It's a strange paradox, isn't it? The people who hurt us the most often feel the hardest to walk away from. We know they're not good for us. We see the patterns. We even speak the truth to our friends. They're emotionally unavailable. I feel drained after every interaction. I don't feel safe to be myself. And yet, when they text, we light up. When they pull away, we chase. When they come back, we hope again, despite everything. Why? Because emotional entanglement isn't just psychological, it's chemical. The Stoics didn't have neuroscience, but they didn't need it. They understood the patterns of human nature with a clarity so piercing, it still cuts through our chaos today. Epictetus once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." And that includes our assumptions about love. Modern psychology calls it intermittent reinforcement, the most powerful form of conditioning known to behavioral science. When affection, attention, or love is given inconsistently, when one day you feel adored and the next ignored, it creates a neurological craving, a loop. Your brain releases dopamine not when you receive the reward, but when you anticipate it. You become addicted not to the person, but to the uncertainty. It's the same principle behind slot machines. The unpredictability is what hooks us. It's not the win, it's the hope. Now apply that to a relationship. Imagine someone who texts you 10 times one day, then disappears for 3. Someone who praises you when it's convenient, but punishes you with silence when you express a need. Someone who knows just when to compliment you, to say "I miss you," right when you've had enough. Each emotional high becomes a hit. Each withdrawal, a crash. And your nervous system, hungry for equilibrium, starts associating anxiety with love, tension with passion, inconsistency with intimacy. This isn't love. This is neurological entrapment. And yet, how often do we shame ourselves for going back? We say, "I'm weak. I'm stupid. I should be over this by now." But if your brain has been wired to chase inconsistency, then what you're fighting isn't just emotion, it's biology. This is where Stoicism offers a profound shift. The Stoics teach us not to demonize our feelings, but to place them under observation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The Stoic doesn't blame the dopamine loop. They observe it. They name it. And then they redirect it. You see, we often chase these highs because we've forgotten what stillness feels like. We've mistaken peace for boredom. We've confused calm with absence. So when someone comes along and floods us with intensity, we call it love. But what it often is a spark thrown at dry grass. It burns bright. It burns fast. And then it leaves you scorched. True connection? That's a steady flame, not a wildfire. So how do you break the loop? You start by identifying the cue. What triggers the craving? Is it their text? A song? A memory? Then you sit with the feeling without responding. You breathe through the urge. You name it. This is not love. This is a chemical craving for chaos. Next, you replace the response. You journal. You walk. You speak truth into your own heart. You say, "I am not hungry for them. I am hungry for the peace I abandoned to keep them close." The Stoics called this practice prohairesis, the disciplined choice to align your actions with virtue, not impulse. You don't react. You respond. You don't suppress the emotion. You channel it toward freedom. And most importantly, you forgive yourself for falling. Because breaking free from emotional addiction is not a straight line. It's a spiral. You will revisit the same place again, but this time with more awareness, with more distance, with more power. Seneca reminds us, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And what is more wasteful than giving our energy to people who feed our wounds instead of our soul? So the next time you feel that ache, that pull, that rush of hope wrapped in fear, pause. Don't chase. Observe. And remind yourself, I am no longer addicted to uncertainty. I am committed to peace. Because your nervous system can heal, your patterns can change, and the storm inside you can go quiet. Next, we'll explore how to do just that. Not by cutting people off in anger, but by practicing Stoic detachment with grace. Because letting go isn't weakness. It's the highest form of inner strength. Number 4, practicing detachment, the virtue of letting go. Letting go isn't about apathy. It's not about giving up or shutting down. In fact, it's the opposite. Letting go, through the lens of Stoicism, is the conscious choice to release what was never yours to hold. It's not cold, it's courageous. It's not distance, it's dignity. Detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you feel everything, but you're no longer enslaved by what you feel. In the world of Stoic thought, detachment isn't a withdrawal from life. It's a commitment to living it with clarity. As Epictetus taught, we suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about them. And one of the most painful judgments we cling to is this: if I let go, I lose. But what if letting go is not the end of love, but the beginning of self-respect? Imagine this. You're holding a rope tied to someone walking away. The harder you grip, the deeper the burn in your palms. But you refuse to let go, because you've convinced yourself that pain equals loyalty. Now ask yourself, what would happen if you simply released? You wouldn't fall. You'd heal. Practicing Stoic detachment starts not with the other person, but with your perception of what they mean to your identity. If you define yourself by the way someone treats you, then their chaos becomes your mirror. But if you see yourself through the lens of virtue, through truth, courage, self-respect, then no rejection, no silence, no ghosted message can alter who you are. This kind of detachment is a daily discipline, a mental hygiene, a sacred practice. Start with this, a morning moment of stillness. Before the world begins to pull at you, sit with yourself. Breathe deeply. Ask, what am I holding on to today that no longer serves me? Maybe it's an unanswered question, a memory you replay like a movie, a version of someone who only existed in your hopes. Name it, then write it. Take out your journal and create a space for your truth. Not the dramatized story, not the fantasy, but the clear-eyed reality. Stoics practice this as a ritual. Marcus Aurelius called it preparing the soul for the day. You prepare not by anticipating every wound, but by strengthening the mind to face what comes without losing itself in the storm. You can also try this, visualization. Close your eyes and imagine the emotional attachment as a cord between you and the person or memory. See yourself holding it gently, not in anger, but with reverence for the lesson it brought. Then, Picture yourself unclipping that cord, not cutting it with violence, but unhooking it with care. Say to yourself, "Thank you for the lesson. I now release the need to understand. I return to my path." Detachment isn't always clean. It doesn't mean you won't miss them. It means your life no longer pauses in their absence. This is what Stoicism teaches: to live present, not prisoner. To experience love deeply, but not let it define your worth. To walk away not with resentment, but with reverence for your own evolution. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. That may sound abstract, but in practice, it means this. You decide whether someone's absence becomes your ruin or your relief. You decide whether you chase them in your mind or hold yourself in peace. And remember, detachment doesn't mean you never love them. It means you finally remembered to love yourself. You may revisit the memory, yes. You may long for a version of the relationship that never came to be. But each time, meet that feeling with compassion, not indulgence. Let it visit, but do not let it move back in. You are not wrong for feeling deeply. You are not broken for wanting connection. But love that requires the abandonment of self is not love. It is emotional debt. So forgive yourself for staying too long. Forgive yourself for hoping. Forgive yourself for thinking you could change them. And then detach. Not because you're heartless, but because you've finally remembered your heart is not a bargaining chip. It is the seed of your soul. And your soul was never meant to live in bondage. Now that we've unhooked from the emotional bait and begun reclaiming our inner calm, it's time to define the sacred space where our healing can take root. Because what comes next isn't just distance. It's the act of drawing new boundaries. And not just any boundaries, but ones built not on bitterness, but on truth. Number 5, boundaries as love, not walls, but gates. There is a moment in every healing journey when you stop blaming others and start building gates. Not walls, not moats, not silent fortresses designed to keep the world out, but gates, measured, mindful, meaningful boundaries. Not as weapons of defense, but as declarations of worth. You see, real boundaries are not about punishment. They're about presence. They say, I value myself enough to protect my peace, and I respect you enough to be clear. Marcus Aurelius, in his daily meditations, once wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. So what happens when your boundaries are born from fear? They dye your world in suspicion, isolation, mistrust. But when they're rooted in wisdom, they paint your life in clarity, dignity, and calm. And clarity, that's where love lives. It's easy to confuse boundaries with distance. To think saying no means you're hard-hearted. But Stoic boundaries don't come from bitterness. They come from balance. Picture a garden. If you never build a fence, the weeds overrun the roses. Stray animals trample the soil. Even the most well-intentioned visitor might wander off the path and destroy something fragile. That fence isn't there because you hate the outside world. It's there because you value what's growing inside. You are that garden. And your boundaries? They are not to shut others out. They are to teach them how to step in gently. Many of us were raised to believe that love means unlimited access, that to care for someone means tolerating everything, that to draw a line is cruel. But that belief has cost too many of us our health, our joy, and our identity. Stoicism offers a different truth. Epictetus once taught, you are a soul carrying a corpse. What he meant was this: your spirit, your integrity, your mind, your peace, those are sacred. The world will always try to pull at your flesh, to tempt your ego, to breach your stillness. But you decide what you let in. That's what a boundary really is. A spiritual filter. You're not rejecting the person. You're rejecting the behavior that disrupts your values. You're not being dramatic. You're being discerning. You're not overreacting. You're finally reacting in alignment with your inner compass. And here's something no one tells you. Real boundaries are tested not in conflict, but in silence. It's easy to declare them when you're angry, but the true test is what you do when they respond with coldness, or guilt, or withdrawal. That's when your boundary either becomes a breakthrough or a backslide. So how do you build these gates? Start with stillness. Before responding to that text, before agreeing to the plan, before saying yes out of habit, pause. Ask yourself, does this serve my peace? Does this align with who I'm becoming? Then speak with grounded clarity. You don't owe a performance. You owe yourself the truth. Say, I'm not available for that kind of conversation anymore. Or, I'm learning to value my time differently now. Or simply, no. The word no is not a wall. It's a door. And behind that door is a life where your peace isn't constantly negotiated. Seneca said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." And so many of us crave more from people who have shown us less than we deserve. We abandon our standards hoping they'll rise. But real love doesn't need your silence to survive. Boundaries will cost you some people. That's a fact. But what you lose in noise, you gain in clarity. What you lose in access, you gain in sovereignty. And the people who remain, they'll honor your gates. They'll knock before entering. They'll see your boundaries not as rejection, but as invitation to meet you at your worth. You don't need to yell to protect yourself. You don't need to justify your peace. You just need to remember, love without boundaries is not love, it's erosion. Now that you've planted the fence, cleared the weeds, and made room for something more aligned, we turn to the next part of this journey, the art of rebuilding. Because breaking patterns isn't enough. We must now construct new ones, brick by brick, breath by breath. Not just to fill the space, but to elevate the self. Number 6, replace, don't just remove, building new patterns. The moment you let go of what no longer serves you, a silence follows. It's not the silence of peace, not yet. It's the silence of absence, of space, of unfamiliar stillness where chaos once lived. And in that silence, an old fear creeps in. Now what? This is where many fall back. Because it's not the pain that draws them back, it's the void. The Stoics teach us that nature abhors a vacuum. If we remove something harmful but don't replace it with something healing, the old wound returns in disguise. Different face, same lesson. So if you've broken a pattern, if you've drawn the line, cut the cord, and claimed your peace, your work is only halfway done. Now comes the true alchemy, building something better. Epictetus reminds us, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. That means your next chapter isn't about avoidance, it's about becoming. It's about replacing toxic loops with sacred rituals, empty validation with internal affirmation, and external dependence with inner direction. But how do we begin? Start small. Start daily. Start inward. Begin with your mornings. For years, your first thought may have been about them, their mood, their message, their absence. Now, it's time to make your mind your own. Before the world touches you, touch your soul. Ask, what does the best version of me need today? Not the most productive version, not the most pleasing version, the most anchored version, the one who doesn't beg for attention, but walks in quiet confidence. Create rituals that center you. Write one truth to carry all day. Speak one line of worth out loud. Prepare one act of self-respect in advance. It could be as simple as going for a walk alone, turning your phone off during meals, or reading 2 pages of a book that deepens your stillness. And community, don't overlook it. If your past patterns thrived in isolation, then your healing must thrive in connection. But not any connection. Choose people who see your evolution, not just your wounds. Share space with those who reflect your growth, not your history. Real friends don't just listen to your trauma. They remind you who you are beneath it. Next, revisit your values. You once made choices from a place of lack, trying to feel whole through someone else. Now you must ask, what do I stand for? What do I want my life to echo with? Write a new personal code. Not a list of goals, but a list of truths. Something like, I do not chase what dims my light. I will not apologize for growing. I will choose peace over patterns every time. Post it where you can see it. Speak it when you forget. Let it become your new compass. Seneca wrote, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. You've faced the adversity. You've walked through fire. Now, prove yourself to yourself, not by what you leave behind, but by what you now build. And what you build should nourish you. Love that feels safe. Habits that uplift. Words that speak life. Even moments of solitude, where the silence is no longer lonely, but holy. Yes, you'll still have flashbacks. Your mind might whisper that the old chaos was exciting. But don't confuse stimulation with aliveness. The real thrill is in creating a life you don't need to escape. So take the same energy you once poured into chasing, fixing, doubting, and redirect it into a new hobby, a deeper friendship, a practice that strengthens your spirit. Learn a new instrument. Start a podcast. Volunteer. Build something with your hands. Create a rhythm your nervous system can trust. The best revenge is not indifference. It's radiance. It's becoming someone who no longer seeks love in places where it must be begged for. Because when you build something new from within, the world around you begins to reflect it. The people you attract shift. The way you walk changes. Your silence becomes sacred, not empty. This is what replacement means in the Stoic path. Not distraction, but transformation. Not numbing, but remembering. You are not here to endlessly heal. You are here to rise. And now that your roots have taken hold, and your soil is rich with wisdom, it's time to water them daily. Next, we'll seal this transformation with a daily practice. A Stoic ritual of renewal that keeps your inner clarity alive and your heart untethered from the noise. Because healing isn't an event, it's a devotion. Number 7. The ritual of renewal. Reset your life stoically. Healing is not a one-time epiphany. It's a ritual, a discipline, a quiet return to self again and again, especially on the days when the old story tries to creep back in and whisper, "You haven't changed at all." But that's a lie. You've changed in every breath you didn't beg for, in every boundary you didn't justify, in every morning you chose clarity over chaos. And now, you make it permanent, not by clinging tighter, but by resetting daily. Not in punishment, but in reverence. This is what the Stoics understood, that true change is sustained not by emotion, but by devotion. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his meditations each morning, not because he was broken, but because he knew the world would try to break his focus. He began each day preparing his mind like a warrior would sharpen his sword, not for battle with others, but for the battle within. You too need your ritual, not just to heal from the past, but to fortify the future. Start your day in silence. Before the noise, before the notifications, before the mental chatter pulls you back into the old loop. Just sit, breathe, ask 3 questions. 1. What is mine to carry today? 2. What must I release again? 3. What would peace look like right now? Write the answers. No filter, no judgment. This is your emotional compass. Follow it, even when it points to hard truths. Then, speak one line of truth to yourself. Something rooted in virtue. Something unshakable. Not affirmation fluff, but grounded truth. Like, I walk with quiet strength. My worth is not up for negotiation. I am no longer entertaining confusion disguised as care. These aren't mantras. These are boundaries spoken into existence. And throughout your day, revisit your intention. Set a timer if you must. At noon, pause. Reconnect. Ask, have I kept my mind clear? Have I acted from virtue or from fear? This is Stoic mindfulness, not floating in the clouds, but anchored in reality. It's not about never feeling hurt. It's about never letting hurt become your home. At night, close the day like the Stoics did. Reflect. Marcus would ask, what did I do well? What did I do poorly? What could I do better tomorrow? You're not judging yourself. You're witnessing yourself. You're tending to your inner garden, gently pulling weeds, celebrating the new growth. This daily rhythm becomes your reset, your refuge, your return. And you don't have to be perfect. That's not the goal. Some days, you'll wake up heavy. You'll miss someone who wasn't good for you. You'll wonder if the pain was really worth the growth. And on those days, the ritual matters even more. Because it reminds you, this work is not about becoming unbreakable. It's about remembering you already survived the break. The Stoics didn't build lives of invincibility. They built lives of inner architecture. So when the storms came, they didn't crumble, they endured. You can too. So try this for the next 7 days. Wake, write, reflect. Every morning, before your phone. Every evening, before your rest. Keep it simple. Keep it sacred. And after a week, notice what's shifted. Not in your circumstances, but in your spirit. You might find your breath deepens. Your cravings quiet. Your mind returns to the present without dragging the past behind it like a weight. You might find that the people who once pulled you into confusion no longer hold that power. You might even find that you no longer need them to. Because you've become your own constant. You've become your own answer. You've become your own home. And now, as we begin to close this journey, not with finality, but with presence, we step into the final reflection. A reminder that this wasn't just about breaking cycles, it was about reclaiming sovereignty. That this wasn't about forgetting them, it was about remembering you. Let's gather what we've walked through, what we've seen, and what we now carry into one last breath of reflection. Don't just heal, transcend. You've come far, not just through the words spoken here, but through the truths you've allowed to echo inside you. Through the pauses where your heart whispered, "Yes, this is me." Through the quiet nods and quiet tears. Through the soft strength of realizing that your suffering wasn't meaningless. It was a message. You didn't come here just to learn how to walk away. You came to remember who you are when no one else is defining you. And that is transcendence. Healing is powerful. It teaches you how to patch the wounds, how to stop the bleeding, how to breathe again after betrayal. But transcendence? That's the art of becoming new, of no longer walking through life guarded, but guided, of no longer needing proof that you're worthy, because you finally believe it. Seneca said, "As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters." So let this next chapter be your own tale, written not from survival, but from intention. Let it be filled not with what you avoid, but with what you now pursue: peace, integrity, wholeness. You don't need to go back and rewrite the past. You don't need to dissect every moment, every silence, every departure. The past doesn't need to be perfect for you to move forward with power. The person who left, the love that broke, the silence that haunted, they were all teachers. But you are the author now. And this version of you, the one watching, reflecting, still standing, is not weak. You are the quiet warrior, the one who didn't just escape the fire, but learned how to walk through it without being consumed. You chose truth over comfort, boundaries over chaos, silence over screaming, self-respect over begging. And that changes everything. So before you go, I ask you, gently, don't let this be just another video. Let it be a vow to yourself, to your journey, to the small, sacred steps that rebuild your soul. If this message has stirred something in you, if you found yourself somewhere between the words, I invite you to subscribe to this space, Stoic Now, not as a follower, but as a fellow traveler, a seeker, a soul who refuses to settle for noise when silence holds more truth. Leave a comment, share your moment, speak your shift into existence. Your story matters, not because it's dramatic, but because it's yours. Like this video if your heart found even one breath of clarity here, because that one breath might be the beginning of your next life. And remember this, always. You are not too much. You are not too broken. You are not too late. You are simply awakening. And when the next storm comes, and it will, you'll meet it not with fear, but with stillness. Not with panic, but with poise. Because you now know, peace is not the absence of pain. It is the presence of power within.